Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Emily Francis. And she's here today to share with us her new book, Healing Ourselves Whole, an interactive guide to release pain and trauma by utilizing the wisdom of the body. So have you ever felt stuck in life and just emotionally exhausted? Today, Emily's here to share with us actionable tools to empower your journey as the catalyst of your own healing and spiritual growth. Now, many of you know Emily. She's a highly sought-after speaker, international best-selling author, and wellness expert with an array of education experience spanning over 20 years. Her knowledge of the body, as well as the body-mind-spirit connection, is extensive, and her commitment to total body-mind-spirit wellness is her driving force. She believes in a whole-body, proactive approach to wellness where balance is the key and kindness paves the way. Emily is also the host of the internet radio show All About Healing on Healthy Life Radio. Emily holds a bachelor's degree in exercise science and wellness, a BS and master's in physical education and human performance concentration. Emily graduated from the Atlanta School of Massage in clinical and neuromuscular massage therapy and went on to specialize at the Dr. Wouter's School North America for an MLD and CDT in manual lymphatic drainage and combined decongestive therapy. Emily holds a gold medal in the U.S. Open in Tai Chi forms. She's a Reiki Master level practitioner and has over 300 hours of yoga teacher training. So let's welcome to the show, Emily Francis.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's such an honor to have you here, Emily. I mean, we've been friends for a while and I've loved your books and I'm so excited about this book, Healing Ourselves Whole. I hear it's a bestseller. What inspired you to write this book?
It was the natural progression, to be honest, because the last two books I wrote were about body healing, but from the position of outside of your body in a way, meaning that like, where do we carry pain and why? And then the next book covered where do we go, when something comes up. But this book, Healing Ourselves Whole, is the work that you do alone. It does not require you to call anyone or go see any professional or work with anybody else. The only place that you might want to go is the mirror. And other than that, the work is completely the dark. It's kind of the shadow side of yourself and then coming up into the bright light part of yourself that I think a lot of us don't even realize already exists inside us. So it's that work that you do, but nobody else is around to help you.
Well, that's so important. And then I'd like you to break down what the shadow side is, because I think a lot of times people get a little confused by that.
The shadow side, in my opinion, because I get confused by that when people talk about shadow work. Sometimes when people talk about shadow work, I'll tell you, it's a little off-putting to me because it feels a little darker than what I think it necessarily has to. So let me explain that my way. So my book is based on the somatic emotion chart. Somatic is a fancy term for body. And the somatic emotion chart was created by me. And it's based on more than 20 years of body healing study, body healing work. And what I've come to notice is that when we go through something really heavy in our life, we tend to focus on how we feel about it, what we think about it, our behaviors towards it. But what we forget is that our bodies store those same impressions, but differently than the way that our minds hold it. And so the work that I'm doing in the beginning of the book is the heavy 4 emotions. And the heavy 4 that I believe that the body holds is trauma, of course, any kind of trauma, guilt, shame, and then grief. Those are the heavy 4 emotions that I literally feel with my hands on the body tissues when we're doing emotional release work. And when you look at like cognitive therapy, they have a feeling wheel and emotion chart, or vice versa, emotion wheel and feeling chart. And you have like so many different thoughts and feelings to choose from. And that's not the way that I feel about the body. I feel like the body is really finite and condensed into the emotions that it stores. And that's into the muscle memory, into the blood and plasma. It's into the cellular memory. It's into the fascia. It's in all the soft tissues of the body. And learning how to dialogue with your body and listen to the stories that your body has tend to be quite different than the stories that your mind has been saying for so many years since whatever it was incurred.
Well, that's so important because you hear a lot of people say they really struggle with shame and guilt, and that's something that kind of follows them around their entire lives. Is it difficult to then release that because it's something that's been with them for so long?
Yes. Yes. I do not sugarcoat this work at all. This work is not easy. I am not asking for you to skate through. In fact, I don't want you to go past one emotion. I want you to go through the one emotion over and over and over until you've really, really gotten through into your body on different scenarios. And what I mean by that is that every chapter has a lengthy meditation that takes you deep beyond every layer of tissue into the body until I consider the soft tissue fields of, I call them carrots. They've been planted into the soft tissues. A cognitive therapist calls it a trauma capsule. So when something becomes too overwhelming, we tend to shove it into a little capsule, drop it into the body, and walk away. My work is to go into the body, pick that capsule up, and get to work. So I don't sugarcoat what we're doing here. The shame and the guilt, in my opinion, are patterns. They're patterns that we lace ourselves up with. So it's like it's not genetic, but like a DNA, but like an energy DNA that's in your whole being because we learn it from our environment. And it becomes something that we take on and we practice. Like, personally, I'm very guilt driven because my mother would use guilt to get me to do whatever it was she needed me to do. And so guilt became a huge trigger for me because I resonate horribly with it because I'm so responsive to it because it's something that's been set as a pattern inside me for so long. And that's what I think a lot of people have gone through with guilt and shame. And guilt and shame are so interchangeable because they really come together. I mean, most people that experience a lot of shame also experience a lot of guilt. But the way that I talk about it in my body in this book is that to me, shame makes the body cry. And guilt to me feels like broken glass. When my hands are on somebody's tissue and they're experiencing those emotions and they're pulling them up and out, that's the way they feel to me. Is like sad, like a weeping willow is the shame. And the guilt is like shards of glass. It's really sharp. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because a lot of times people, it's like they feel that, and I can understand how that's like really sharp for them.
Mm-hmm. And then the fourth one is grief. And to me, grief stands on its own. So you have trauma, shame, guilt. Those things interact. Grief is its own entity. It's its own whole dynamic. So it's not in that 3 cycle. It's not a shame cycle. Grief to me slices you in part. And now from the moment of really extreme grief, you live a parallel life. You live the life that you're in reality, and the life that would be your reality if that thing had not happened, died, or gone away. And we keep track of it and we begin to give it a timetable. So the obvious one is a death. Somebody that we loved so dearly that dies, we tend to go forward and go, wow, today would have been my dad's 50th birthday. Today would have been this. You keep them growing because you really don't know how to live without that or that person or even that place or that relationship. And you have to figure out how to live without it. So then you have that real time, your other life. And what I try to help you with is, first of all, give you permission to have that grief, because I don't think it's fair the way people look at grief and expect you to heal from it. I think you can heal through it. I think you can carry it, but it never leaves. It just finds a place where you can function with it. And that's the basis of grief to me, to the way that I explain it.
Well, and when we talk about trauma, I know that you share that there's lots of different types of trauma, and most people would never even consider this. I'd love for you to go over that with us.
There is a lot of different types of trauma. But at the end of the day, also trauma is trauma. Trauma is anything that produces a negative experience, but there's also really significant trauma. So, well, I talk about at the beginning of this chapter, I talk about unintentional trauma first, because I want people to remember that things like childbirth is incredibly traumatic. Even if you have a beautiful, blissful birth experience, it does a number on your body. There's trauma. There is. So even if it's the worst or the best, a child that exits the system leaves with it in its wake massive amounts of trauma. And so I started thinking about that because after I had a C-section, I have so many residual effects in my body. My body will never be the same. You can't put it back. But I also know that the intention was never to cause me harm. It was to bring out a child. You know what I mean? But it's still trauma. So you still have to understand that there's a trauma there and that there's a memory there, and you can work through that. One of the other kinds of trauma, they have there's a lot actually, but they have complex trauma. They have single traumas. There's a lot, and I go through them according to the research. But the work that I do at the end of the day is incredibly individual to you. So while somebody else might not think your trauma is that big of a deal, who cares what they think of your trauma? It's what you think of your trauma. It's how you hold it in your body. So one of the things that I bring to the attention is that nobody in the world knows your story but you. Nobody. Even if you were in the same accident with 3 other people, their story isn't going to be the same. It's just not. And so you have to go into it totally based on how you are holding those memories and what level of trauma it feels like to you. But a complex trauma is more of a lot of times we associate it with war or being in the military because it usually has more than one perpetrator that's coming at us to cause the trauma, or more than one experience at the same time to be a complex trauma. If a person was, say, gang raped, that would be a complex trauma. And there's a lot to it. But the truth is, the very first sentence that I say in the book is what qualifies me to write this book. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm a body worker. I have my hands on people's bodies. I've been listening to people's bodies for almost 20 years. That's what qualifies me. And that's where I'm coming from. So even though I do understand some of that verbiage for trauma, I want us to go beyond it and really just feel for ourselves what each different trauma feels like to us, and then work with it individually and know that don't stop comparing our traumas, because people will constantly look at other people and go, well, you know what? I didn't have it as bad as they do. This book is about you. It doesn't matter what they have. It matters how you've been holding it. Because if you don't take care of this stuff and you don't treat these traumas that have grown roots in your body, this is where chronic pain comes from. This is where chronic illness comes from. Those traumas, those shame and guilt patterns, and God forbid, those grief patterns, they grow roots inside your body. And soon enough, or long enough, it depends, those roots will choke you out. And so it's time that we start to learn not just to go through the mind, but to really go down deep inside our bodies and learn how to work with them so that we can function in a way that leads us to our highest good and greatest joy and greatest health.
Now, I was so impressed that you talk about trauma also being part of being in the pandemic, because people don't even think about that, and there has been so much trauma from that.
There is so much trauma. I can't even imagine home to home what level it is per person. And, for some people, there's a lot of this pandemic that's actually been a big blessing for me. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't been traumatic. It's not hard. It's really hard to look at our kids and mask them up and send them to school. Like they're the history makers right now, our children. And their view of the world is so different because of what's going on right now. But for other people, relationships, especially who you're living with when you're in lockdown, it might be incredibly lonely because you're alone. It might be hell because you're alone with someone that makes your life a living hell. Any cracks in the system that you've been dealing with come wildly to life in a lockdown. And so there's a lot of divorce happening right now. There's a tremendous amount of suicide happening right now. There are so many people clinging for dear life just to stay here and try to figure it out. Not to mention how many people have been dying over this. So the traumas they're a conglomerate of traumas, because you're watching people die. Then you're watching other people, completely laugh it off and think this isn't even real. And then you have so much misinformation that you don't even know what's the truth, even if you think you know the truth, because none of it has actually really been grounded and solid. And everybody feels confused. They feel lost. They feel helpless, hopeless, and the trauma is building and it's not over. Now, I think people are starting to feel a little glimmer of hope, and I hope that's true. But, I'm listening to a lot of people during this pandemic talk about that they really feel like they don't have a lot of options and that leaving this planet might be the way to go. And I hope that we start to get a little bit back to a balance, because we need you here. We need every person that's listening to this and beyond. We need you here. You are a sacred part of this world, of this planet, of this life. And I wish that people could recognize their own value and rearrange what's going on in their dialogue so that we can find a better way to come up and out. But the traumas are massive right now.
So you talk about rearrange our dialogue. What does that mean?
It's more than just how you talk to yourself, but how you talk to yourself is the basics. It's the way that our bodies are talking to us is the part that we're missing. So then everybody in the world, speak to yourself kindly. Your body's listening. It's true. That's totally true. But what about the part where your body's talking to you and you have no clue what's going on? So that goes both ways, and we don't understand it. So the dialogue with your body is that pain is not random. Everything that occurs is a signal. Your body signals to you all the time. A sharp pain, your back going out, bowel disruptions. There are a lot of ways that your body communicates that something is not in balance. But because our bodies aren't speaking, we don't get it. And because our minds aren't necessarily always clear and single pointed focus, our body doesn't get the messages either, because we're not sticking to the same script. And that's an important place to be. So people I know that are in hefty healing, that maybe have been diagnosed with a life-altering illness, they get really sharp and fast on their inner dialogue, because if they don't, they're not going to survive it. They know it better than anybody else. They get in there, they get in line, and they know that they don't have room anymore for the negative talk. They just don't. So everything has to be a gratitude sentence. Even if you don't feel grateful, everything changes. My favorite mantra, and I created it, is, and I say this to myself whenever I feel out of balance, every cell in my body is reprogramming itself to function at healthy optimum levels. And I say it over and over and over. Every cell in my body is reprogramming itself to function at healthy optimum levels. People that are in really serious healing places, this becomes their daily dialogue all the time. Not necessarily this particular mantra I'm giving mine. That's my mantra that I go to. But everybody has some sort of return statement that they create to bring the health going forward. And when I talk about dialoguing with your body, it is learning how to listen to what your body's been begging for you to listen to.
It's so interesting because a lot of times people, when you think about listening to your body, yes, they can see that they've got some chronic thing going on or some pain, but most people don't know how to really tap into that and listen to what the body's trying to tell them.
No, they don't. But you know what? This book teaches you, because every single chapter comes with a 15 to 20 minute meditation into your body, deeply into your body, gives you the time to sit with whatever carrot has been planted, allows that carrot to message signal to you. And you start to learn how your body signals, because everybody's bodies might do it different. Mine, if I'm going really deep, it'll kind of light up. It'll kind of alert me. This is the area I need you to come to. But to other people, it might be a heat wave in that area. To other people, it might be a color. To other people, it might be a vision. To other people, it might be a thought, where you don't actually see anything in your mind's eye. You actually just think to it and boom, you're there. But everybody's body signals slightly different depending on who you are. If you're a person that's like super, super analytical, you're not going to have this deep, organic, light up energy thing going on. You might have a thought in your mind. the signal is right there behind your knee. It'll be a different dialogue. So I keep saying the dialogue with your body because it's going to be a messaging system and a conversation that only you are going to know what to do and how to figure it out. But through these meditations, if you keep repeating them, you will learn how your body signals. And that's the whole point of this book, really, honestly, is to teach you what's going on in your body, because nobody, in my opinion, has done that.
Yeah, no one has given us that manual, until now, on how to listen to what the body is trying to share with us. And I know you've been doing this work just forever, and you're so good at what you do. What does it look like when you're working with somebody and their body presents a trauma?
That's an interesting, I love that you asked that. And it's funny because nobody has ever asked me that. It's the same thing that I was just talking about, though. Different people's bodies signal to me differently. But it's interesting because I have a couple of, I'm definitely a lot of claircognizant. So I have a lot of music that plays. So if my hands are on someone, I'll hear different songs depending on where I am in their body. And the lyrics will show up in my head. And then when I ask them about it, it's exactly where they're at. And then when they start to release or do something different, the songs will change like a tuner, like an auto tuner. So that's one way that some people get through to me. Other things, if I have my hands on somebody, sometimes I'll see an actual image in my head. And even like this was really intense, but my friend brought over her boyfriend who didn't live in town. And I had my hands up on his shoulders and she was in the room. And all of a sudden I said, I feel like there's a man standing to our left that's like really close to you that is trying to get through. Because I don't try to be a medium, and it's not something. But if I'm in that space, then sometimes spirit will come and visit. And I said, I feel like they just really recently passed. And all of a sudden he starts bawling, and his girlfriend looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, I forgot to tell you his brother just died." And I was like, well, I'm glad that you didn't tell me, because I would look like a big fat phony if you had, but they're standing here. And then the same person, I said, "There's something past your feet, though. It's not the same person, but it's a male and they're in pieces." And it was one of his dear friends was in a war and was killed very violently. And like, that's something that's rare for me, but it does happen. So it's not their body signaling, but it's more the grief signaling. So it's still, essentially it is, because it's his energy, his body, his grief saying, "Look, I know that you're trying to help him. You need to know that these things are what's going on." So that was like super intense, but depending on who the person is, my experiences with feeling what their bodies have been trying to tell them can range from really basic, easy stuff to really creepy, beyond the veil, a lot of stuff, very, very spiritually driven.
Well, that's very interesting. And, with all the people that you've worked with, what do you think is like the number one thing that holds them back from living their full life?
I think the number one thing is that they don't give themselves permission. They don't give themselves permission to feel healthy. They don't give themselves permission to heal. And they don't give themselves permission to look inside and realize what a freaking awesome, badass human they are. And I don't know what that is, because I used to do it too. And when I finally fell in love with myself, and I mean that, like, I had to actually become a person that made me want to fall in love with me. So it was a lot of years of work. And it's interesting to me because I definitely don't have the body that I used to have when I had, when I was like younger and slimmer and had more of what people would think, "Oh, she's got this," and then you kind of get older and, the looks start to fade and the body changes. And yet I love myself more now than I ever did in all those years when it was more body driven and more physical driven. But I've become a person that I like spending time with. I used to hate to be alone, because I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't like the thoughts, and I didn't like how I felt alone. And now I really value the time alone, because I've become my own best friend, and I've become my own cheerleader, to be honest, because I am the only one that knows that certain little things were a triumph, because other people would be like, "What? That was a big deal?" To me, it was a big deal. So from all my years of having anxiety and panic attacks, the big thing for me was going to the grocery store was incredibly hard to do. It was incredibly hard to go into a grocery store and not go running out and leave my cart. And that was just my place that creeped me out. And now here I am. I go to the grocery store every other day and I actually take my time and enjoy myself. And sometimes I'll just stop and go, look at you grocery shopping and enjoying this, because I know how to talk to myself now. I know how to stop and give myself props and love and a pat on the back. And hey, you know what? You're feeling a little overwhelmed right now. There's a lot of people. I'm also really sensitive to a lot of people. So I also had to learn that part, that not all of it was my own anxiety, that a lot of it was that when somebody else is really unhappy and they're near me, it weighs very heavily on me. So I had to also learn how to protect myself, my space, my energy, recognize if it's mine or not mine, and then go into that. That takes a lot of time and work to learn the different parts of yourself, and then how to work with you. And then past that, how to love yourself. And that's what I wish for everyone, is to realize that everybody here is gifted. Everybody here was born with something really special. And I think it's high time, especially right now, given all that's going on in the world, that we owe it to ourselves to find out what that is and fall madly in love with it and make it a passion project.
Man, wouldn't it be a great place if the world was like that, where we are actually in love with ourselves?
Yes, because then you'd be nice. You'd be nice to the animals. You'd be nice to the people, because then you'd start to recognize the other people in you.
Yeah, we're all connected. We're definitely all connected. Well, and it's so interesting because I know in your book, you have several places where people can journal. Why did you include that?
I included a journal after every single meditation, because when I was suffering with really horrific agoraphobia, anxiety, and panic, the only thing that really, I did a million therapies, so many, but the only thing that really was my consistent was my writing brought me back to life. Because sometimes people don't understand how you feel, but the page always does. So I have journals after every meditation, but my journals are not blank pages at all. My journals take you through a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sensory to remember exactly what you just tracked inside your body. So we do 5 things that you could see in that place that you were just in with your body, 4 things that you could touch, 3 things that you could hear, 2 things that you could smell, and 1 thing that you could taste, because you don't realize how detailed the stories come back to you until you start to put those in place. Like, to me, a car accident tastes like you're eating aluminum foil. Something happens when you hit something. It's like this weird taste. So if you were asking me what the taste was, I would say aluminum foil. But I wouldn't think about that unless somebody asked me. And so in the journaling, they're very, very specific. And then we move past that. But these journals are not suggestions. They're a holding space for your healing and for you to come forward. And to be honest, I would never put this in writing and say, here's what I think. But if you want to do this book and go through it and get gut-wrenchingly honest in your journals, it's okay at the end if you want to take those papers out and burn them. I know that sounds odd, but sometimes if people know that nobody will ever, ever read them, they can write things that they would never otherwise admit.
Yeah, that's when you can get really honest and really pour things out where, sometimes if you have people reading it, you're like, oh, not sure I'm ready to share that. You don't want to
have a book, because I actually lent somebody a book, and it was my sister-in-law, and I realized that I had written all in that book. And I wrote in that book when I was single and going through a heartbreak. And here I am, it's my husband's sister-in-law. And I'm like, oh my God, I really want you to read this book, but I don't want you to read what I wrote, and I was really self-conscious about it, even though part of me was like, you should be proud of this. Look how far you've come. But the other part was like, this is nobody's business, but I want her to, read the book. So I will say this on my website, healingourselveswhole.com, healingourselveswhole.com. There's going to be a tab once the book releases May 11th. There'll be a tab for the audio meditation, so you can actually hear me take you through them. And there'll be a second tab that'll say journals. And it's a copy of all the journals from the book. So if you want to write it separately, or if you're checking out my book from the library, they ask you not to write in the book, you can go to the website and print those journals out. And then you have a safe space that you can write and dispose of them how you see fit.
Well, that's pretty exciting. I know a lot of times people who've gone through very difficult trauma, something that's just really hard to face, When they look at, gosh, okay, I have to go to a place where I am kind of moving through this trauma, but I don't want to re-experience it. How is that for them going through this process?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that. What we talk about during this process is that you don't go back in as the main character. You don't go back in and re-experience the actual trauma itself. You sit next to it as a observer. You become the observer of the situation or the narrator of the movie that you're watching, but you are no longer the main character. So I'm not asking you to get hurt in that way, but I am asking you to witness it and go back as far into it as you may want to, comfortably, safely, and then be willing to, we remove and plant, we do a thing called remove and replant during the trauma of the heavy four. We pull that carrot out from the roots and then we fill it with something equally as weighty. It's like an opaque, it's a hot liquid in our minds that we pour right into that hole immediately so that we don't miss the feeling. Because the other part of this is that when people have traumas actually remove out of their body, they feel raw, naked, exposed, and vulnerable, and they have no idea how to live without it. Years I did healing around my anxiety and panic, but as soon as I would feel any kind of relief, I would summon it back to me because I didn't know how to live without it anymore. It became such a dysfunctional circle because I didn't know how to just sit and be. And the idea of being happy was terrifying because, obviously if you feel happy, then something bad's going to happen right after because you just brought it on. And so you have to get out of those kinds of thinking patterns. And that's some of the hardest stuff in there. But I don't go really, we discuss all of that stuff, but mostly I try to give your body the sensory experience that it needs with that replace with that hot liquid that is equally the same weight as what the carrot was, so that you don't feel naked and exposed and so uncomfortable or try to pull it back. There's not room for it to come back because you've already filled the space.
Oh, I'm so glad that you explained that because a lot of times people think, okay, I just pulled this out. So what's replacing it?
Right.
Where's what energy is going to go there?
Yeah. And you feel really light. Even like the way that we speak. My friend is a spiritual counselor and I pretty much love everything that comes out of her mouth because I feel like she's just constant wisdom. And I love the way she comes up with things. But this was long before Brene Brown started talking about the story in my head or the story I'm telling myself. And my friend would say, I'm going to need you to fill in the blanks and not make assumptions that I know what you mean, because I will fill in the blanks with something really negative, and then you'll be surprised by how I behave around you. So if you could just be really honest with me and tell me everything and don't leave out little, parts, because it's not going to be a healthy place for me, what I do with it. And I think that's brilliant. And I think that's the same thing that happens in our bodies when something heavy has been removed finally. Instead of like we rejoice instantly because it's like, oh my God, I can breathe so much better. But then you go, oh, wait, now what do I do? And that's why I tried to fill it quickly. Because honestly, I'd gone to a shaman several years ago, a Native American medicine woman. It was a woman in this case. And she did something called soul extraction, which to me was like reverse sewing. It was like, and they call it in some of the books, they call it going into your energy body and scooping out the goop. And it felt like she was reverse sewing through my body and taking out so much heaviness. And at first I felt like I was high as a freaking kite when I left there. I mean, I was like, oh my God, this is like, I feel like I'm on drugs. This is crazy. I feel so amazing. And then it was like just a few days later, it was like, I don't have any idea what to do with this. No idea how to feel this light and free. So I'm going to need to put something back in. And what I put back in was the same fears. And so I basically undid her work because I didn't have the capacity yet to take responsibility and understand how to fill it because nobody taught me.
Do you think for people who are kind of new to this, they kind of do that often where they give away all that stuff, get rid of all those carrots, and then they're kind of bringing them back because they're so used to being that way?
Yes. I did it for years. We go back. That's what I'm saying. When my anxiety finally started to lift, it was like, oh, wait. You're kind of my dysfunctional best friend now. I live with you more than I live with anybody else. I have no idea how to live without this. And that sucks.
Yeah, that's not fun. You know, so
I mean, I was in a cycle that honestly I never thought I would break. And it really does feel incredible to wake up and go, wow, anxiety still lives with me. It's not, to me, having anxiety or depression in a massive sense is much to me like being an alcoholic. You're always in recovery. You're never healed. And I say that in the book. You're never healed with an ED. That's just not real and it's not reality. You're always in healing. You're always in process. Healing is a verb. It's not a sentence. It doesn't come with a full stop. And that's really important because we're always all a work in progress. But wouldn't it be nice to start opening up and being a work in progress to new things because we finally figured out how to function well and let go of the things that were holding us back?
oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm
Yeah.
tired of it.
I think a lot of people are right there too, where they're like, you know what? I've been dealing with the pandemic. I've been by myself. I've had to learn how to be by myself. And, sometimes they develop fears of going, gosh, is this going to end? What's going to happen later? But it's nice to get to this place where you can kind of remove a lot of those fears.
Yes. And I want to say this too, because I find this to be important. As you know, I host my own show on Healthy Life Radio, all about healing. And I think like you, I'm getting inundated by publicists for a lot of authors right now that are writing books about reentry from the pandemic. It's the newest rage and craze among authors is to help us all get back in. Let me just say that I wrote this book before the pandemic ever came to town. I was under contract. I wrote this book when I was personally in a place that didn't feel like the right place for me, that wasn't resonating with my soul. I felt stuck with it. And I say this like it felt slightly suffocating, like I was living with a very small boa constrictor around my neck. And it never made it impossible to breathe, but it always made it labored. And when I started writing this book, in fact, I did the editing from my new home. But when I was writing this book, I specifically wrote a part, and I wrote it for me. I wrote it to myself while I was writing, and it says something to the effect of creating a physical, healthy environment for you is paramount, which I believe, and I believe that we have to be willing to leave the yard if that's what it takes. If you're not in a healthy place. But what I say to myself in the book that's in writing is where you are today is no reflection of where you might be a year from now. And for me, that's really huge because I wrote this before the pandemic came. Where I am a year from when the day I wrote that is in the middle of a pandemic and I'm living in another country. So you really have no, and you know what, quite frankly, I'm living in a country that completely resonates with my soul and with my body. And when I was sitting, I know exactly where I was sitting the day that I wrote that part to myself that I shared, and it's in the book for other people. I know where I was sitting. I know what I was looking at. I know what my view was. And I was trying really hard to make life work in the wrong place because I had done so many things to support my kids, and my husband and I we were content because we were happy in our home with each other, with our family. But everything outside of it, it just wasn't the right place. And that's hard because right now in a pandemic and a lockdown, unless you're living in your dream place, you might feel like that. And so when I wrote this book, it wasn't for the pandemic. It was never for the pandemic. I didn't even know that was ever going to be a thing in our life. And so this book, while it applies beautifully with everything that is going on around us, it isn't one of the new books with the new buzzwords, dancing around about how to come back to life after life, in lockdown. This is how to come back to life after life in lockdown because your body's been locked down for years, not 1 year, years.
Yeah, it's all that trauma. And a lot of times it can even be from birth, so it's not just trauma that's happened within the last year. And a lot of people are feeling the trauma from that, but it's really kind of, from what I understand, it's kind of trauma that's been, just kind of layered.
Exactly. Layered. It's been planted into the system, and our work in this book is to help you unplant. But if I may, can we talk about the second half of this book?
Oh yeah. I'd love to talk about that.
The second half of the book is not your heavy 4 emotions. It's your fabulous 4. And that is happy, joy, connected, and empowered. And if it's okay with you, I want to give a brief overview of what I mean according to the body in those four. Is that cool?
Yeah, I think it's important because a lot of times people think, well, how am I even going to get there?
Well, yes. And that's the action bridge, and that's suppress, process, release. And we do a lot of work in that action bridge. But I want to take you over and explain in your body. Happy is not deeply embedded into the system the way that joy is, but happy is a moment in time, and it usually occurs in the present tense. It's bliss. It's that smile. It's feeling good. It's feeling of wellness. It's happy. We understand happy intellectually. And what happens is we experience it enough times that our body recognizes the chemicals that are being released and the experience that we're getting. And so that's how it builds on the happy. But then deeper than that, a physiological response that dives into that muscle memory the way that the trauma does. So this is your pair to it is joy. So the way that anything that's negatively affected you, that's sitting in those muscle tissues, joy is exactly its opposite counterpart. And it's also sitting in those same tissues, same way. It's all being stored the same way. And here's what I mean. Imagine you're in your car and you hear an old song. Let's do a fun one like Bryan Adams' Summer of 69. When that song comes on, I remember being in high school. I remember partying. I remember my boyfriend. I remember the smells around me. I remember the leather seats. I remember the car. All of a sudden, my memories come flooding back. That's your tissue memories. They're letting you have them again. So the same way that we do work on trauma is the same way we can do work on joy. But joy elicits chemicals completely different than trauma chemicals, obviously. And they release the chemicals that make you healthier, that make you better, that make you feel more joyful. So when we go and find those carrots in our soft tissues, we actually don't remove those carrots. Same with happy. What we do is we notice that there are flowers blooming from the carrot leaves, and we pick off some flower blooms and plant them in more of our body, because that's how better health can come in, is using that imagery to create more of the same. And this is super cool to me. There is a flower on the side of the road called Queen Anne's lace. It's a white, kind of flat flower, and they're usually, people think of them as weeds maybe, but they're usually on the side of the highways. If you pulled out the Queen Anne's lace, at the bottom of that root is a teeny tiny wild carrot, for real. So here I've been doing all of these imageries in my meditations, and it turns out that it's all real, which I just love.
Oh my gosh. I love that too.
I love it so much. I couldn't believe it. And I actually stopped on the highway in Georgia, and I practically risked myself because people were speeding by, and I'm pulling out these Queen Anne's laces and finding these tiny little carrots at the bottom. It's so cool. And then beyond joy goes into connected. And this is what I mean by connected. When you are out of balance, there is chaos in your system. The cellular structure, the cellular memory, the emotions, the blood, the plasma, all of it. Imagine it like a positive and negative magnet. And imagine that a lot of those magnets are negative to negative or positive to positive, and they repel each other. So inside your body, nobody's on the same team heading for the same goal. All the thoughts in your head don't have it. You're not sitting on the same side of the board. All the thoughts on all the movements and actions and energies of the body are not sitting on the same side of the same board. They're not heading to the same place. So it's chaos, and it's not even organized chaos. It's disorganized. It's chaos, and it's dis-ease. So what we do with the meditation is we line those back up so that you're all on the same team. And all of a sudden, the cells are going positive to negative, boop, boop. You're in line. And now you're all going towards the one same goal, which hopefully is, intense and beautiful health, happiness, inner peace, whatever way you want to say it. That's your goal. So that's being connected. It's a very deeply held internal structure. It has nothing to do with anything on the outside world. It is all deep within your body. And then finally, empowered. And that is finally having that joy, having that happiness, having that interconnectedness. And now you take it out into the world around you. Can you maintain the same anchor? Can you maintain that connected feeling deep inside your own nucleus? And now take it out of your door, go out into the world around you, and still stay tightly, highly, beautifully, comfortably, peacefully anchored inside yourself. and hold your own space and hold it well. And that is becoming empowered.
Oh my gosh, I just love that. And it's so interesting because people don't even realize that we have all this locked in within us.
Isn't that a shame? Isn't that like, I don't mean
Yeah.
to even use the word shame, but really, I started doing research in one of my other books about where does the good stuff go? Why do we constantly study healing on trauma? And honestly, I sort of wish I would have added the word joy into this subtitle. And I didn't think about it at the time, but I don't want people to think that this book only takes you down deep and down dark, because it also takes you up high and up light. And when I started to do research onto where is the good stuff, I found very minimal research done. Very, very minimal. And then I decided to take it upon myself and do lots of meditation work, deep questioning, putting my hands on people, starting to recognize the happier patterns. Because that's the other odd thing, is that when you get into the healing work and everything's about trauma and shame and all these things, you start to become like a radar detector for it. But when you start to study the other stuff, the happier, then you tend to notice those things. And that's interesting to me because, a lot of times if you're happy or peaceful or centered, people want to be near you. They understand that something is unique to you and they want whatever that is. But now I want to take it much deeper and higher, that it's not just that somebody else seems attractive to you as a friend, as a partner, as a lover, because they have something so unique. It isn't so unique. They've just found it. But you can find it too, and it does exist in you. And that's the part that I really want to offer to people, because we are wasting our lives away feeling like crap. We are. Every life is going by so fast as it is, and we're watching people leave so quickly, and it's so incredibly precious. And yet we spend so much time in the constant shame, guilt, trauma cycle that we don't even realize that there's all this access right inside our own body to find joy and happiness, to feel connected, to feel empowered. But you have to be willing to go there, and you have to be willing to give yourself acceptance and permission that you are worthy of this healing, because it's in you. So you don't have to go to some big wild guru and think, am I worthy? The answer is yes, but you have to be able to answer that.
That's a real important part. And I like that because it really empowers people on their life's journey, because you're right. We don't need a guru. These are things that with time we can kind of work through ourselves.
Yes. But here's the other thing. I'm going to say this and it's going to sound almost tacky, and I'm sorry, but this is different. Um, for a lot of years, I have been in a very different position with work, that I've been very blessed to have a partner that can cover the bills. So I do the work that I want to do because I want to do it. And that makes me a very, very different body worker, because I'm not doing it for your money. So I'm not trying to keep you as an ongoing client. And that's the part that I think it messes us up sometimes, because you have a lot of people in the healing field that keep a lot of the tricks of the trade or the secrets of the goodness to themselves, because they have to keep having somebody come back, because otherwise you're not going to have a practice and you have to pay your bills. And I'm not saying that people are money driven, but it's a natural human response, and it's based on reality. And it makes me different, because I don't want you to want to come back. I want you to want to come back because you want to every now and again, but I never want you to need me. It's just not important to me. I don't want it. And so I give you everything I've got, and then I walk away, because I'm okay that you can take it or leave it. And I do that in my body work. I do it in my writing. And I do think that it makes me a little bit of a different bird. But I also think it makes my information really, really practical and useful, because I don't need to leave carrots dangling for you to have to get more. I try to give it all that it is, because I've worked with people for years when I needed the healing that kept me dangling, because I felt like I couldn't heal unless they were there. And I don't like that. I think it's dangerous, but I think it happens all too often, especially in body work. I mean, I'm sure it is in other things too, but in body work and in healing work, people get addicted to you, and people that are the ones giving the work feed off of that. They need it. They need to be needed. They need to be adored. They need to be, part of this healing process. They take it as part of their own success. And like I say about the kind of women like you like me, like people that I love, that I surround myself with, I surround myself with powerful, beautiful women who do not feel like any success of mine somehow negates theirs. Same with me. I want to see people succeed. It doesn't take away anything from me. It's the same thing in healing. So you want to surround yourself with people that don't feel like if you get better, it somehow negates their place in your life. That they want you to get so strong that you don't have to have them. And that's hard to find.
I think that's so funny that people do that, because that's really operating on a thought process of lack. Like there's not going to be
Yes.
enough for me, so I can't really honor you.
But think about how much that happens.
Oh
That
yeah.
happens in every field, but in the healing field, a lot of people, and me for also for years and years, lived paycheck to paycheck. When you don't have the clients come, or you're working for somebody that doesn't have the clients coming, you are screwed. So the people that you do have, you try to do everything you can to make sure they return. It's not like for me, when I look for a chiropractor, I want a chiropractor that does not tell me to come 4 days a week from here on for the next several months. I don't want that. That to me is a huge red flag. But to other people, it just feels like that's the norm. But I want a chiropractor that literally looks at me and says, "Hey, I think you're actually really good. You know your body well. Come to me when you need me." That's the person I'll return to. The person that looks at me and says, "Come 3 days a week for the next 6 months," I will never go back. Same thing. My acupuncturist, when I first met her, I had gone to other acupuncturists, but when I first met her, it was the greatest healing I think I'd really ever felt. And I said to her, "Oh my gosh, should I come back next week? Like, how often do you want me to come?" And she said, "As often as you want." And I said, what does that mean? What does that mean? Should I come, next week? And I said, if you were actually giving me a prescription, when would you tell me to come back? And she said, "Well, I would tell you to come back every 6 months." And I was like flabbergasted. I'm like, "What do you mean every 6 months? I'm asking to come back next week." And you're saying I don't need to, but every 6 months. And it was because she's not attached to the part that she has to be part of it, or that it has to be the income. And she's actually the one that put that in my head. I actually shared an office with her. She was my mentor and my friend. From the day I graduated, I was friends with her before, but from the day I graduated massage school, she opened her practice to me and we worked in conjunction. And part of the thing that I loved so much about her is that she never operated on that lack idea. So to her, it was, "I'm going to do everything I can for you. I'm going to help you get on your own 2 feet. And then I'm going to find the next person, because there's always a next person." So, some people operate that way. Some people don't.
Yeah. It's so much better to be empowered where you can manage a lot of this yourself. And I felt like your book, Healing Ourselves Whole, really helps people with that. And I'm going to put you on the hot seat a little bit here. You
Yeah,
ready?
do it. Yeah.
So I understand that you've got some great meditations that come with this book. I want to know, would you like to do a meditation now?
Okay. All right. The topic is, I do like this hot seat. Nobody's put me on that seat before. I like it. Okay. The topic is, let's go inside our bodies and see what if any, is blocked. So let's start. So wherever you are today listening to this, unless you're driving, if you're driving, please do not follow. If you are at home and you're sitting at your computer desk, or you're sitting at your cycling, because a lot of people tend to listen to podcasts now when they're exercising, or if you could be laying in your bed, which that would actually be my preference. Wherever you are, take your time out, step away from whatever it is that you're doing, and try to give all of the attention to me via you. If you can get your feet flat on the floor, if you're sitting, do that. You want your body to line up properly. So you want your shoulders in line with your hips in line with your knees in line with your pinky toes and your big toes. You want to relax your hands either down by the sides or in your lap, preferably with your palms facing up. Now, the next part is that you want to bring your chin slightly in, but not down. You want to separate your top and bottom teeth comfortably in your mouth, and you want to rest your tongue against the roof of the mouth behind the 2 front teeth, but slightly back on the ridge. There's a little ridge in that upper palate that actually stimulates an energy center. So I want to turn that on. I want you to close your eyes comfortably. And I want you to relax the energy between your eyebrows. I want you to soften the lines on your forehead. I want you to go into your ears and open them. I want you to connect the energy from the jaws to the ears and open the ears in such a way that if there's any tension, it can leave through the ears, through the holes of the ears and out of your body. I want you to exhale first all of your breath. I want you to push, not with your hands, your belly button all the way back to the spine. Get rid of all the breath. Don't breathe in yet. Get comfortable. Lower your shoulders. Drop everything down. When you're ready, take a slow, deep, comfortable breath in. Don't rise. Don't stress. Hold your breath. And then gently just open your mouth. Signal ah. The sound ah talks to your nervous system and lets it know we're in relax now. When you're ready, slowly breathe in for the count of 1, 2. Hold your breath. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. Begin again. Now we're not going to we're just going to breathe in and out slow and steady through the nose. The idea is that your breath is silent. Silent on the inhale, silent on the exhale. It's a stress-free, deep breathing. I want you to slow your breath. I want you to calm your feelings and slow your thoughts so that all that your focus is inside your body. That you're focusing on your belly button, letting it expand and rise with the breath in and coming back towards the spine with the breath out, but not overly pushing, just letting your body soften. Notice your hands and your fingers. Are you holding? Are you holding tension? Or are your fingers completely loose and relaxed? Let your toes relax. Let your tailbone lengthen like a tail. Let your spine elongate and roll against whatever materials behind you, chair or floor. Let it just lengthen, stretch out without stretching. Everything is moving slower, more methodical, more comfortable. I want you to think about your blood flow in your body, and I want you to climb into it. I want you to feel your blood expanding with oxygen as you breathe in, all the way down to your toes, and then exhaling and bringing the carbon dioxide up and out. But go inside that blood flow. Feel where it's going through your whole body. Like you're surfing, like you're a mini version of you, surfing on the bloodlines, surfing through your blood. Noticing even that the color of the blood is getting richer. The oxygen is coming in more. You are no longer your thoughts. You are only your body. And right now, as the blood flows, every breath makes your body healthier, more alive, vibrant. Continue to just breathe really rhythmically and let your blood lead you, lead your mind, lead your thoughts, show you what's inside your body. And in between the layers of the blood and the skin itself, begin to tap in right there in that flow, above the blood, below the skin, all over your body. That's your subtle body. It's the beginning. It's the energy body. When you go up and down through your breath and flow down the limbs into the fingers, down the legs into the toes, up and down your spine, all the way to the tip top of the head, all the way down to the very bottom of the tailbone, in and around below the ribs into this whole stomach, lumbar region, into the chest and lungs. In that very finite energy flow, Ask your body if any area feels stuck. Is there an energy block anywhere in your body? And if the answer is yes, bring your attention there and sit with it and look at it. What does it look like to you? Can you touch it? Can you feel it? Does it have a temperature? Does it have a color? Does it have an emotion or an energy? Ask your body. Ask that blocked space to reveal itself to you and tell you its truth. And do not judge it. Just listen. If you can open up your hands and let it jump into your hands so you can feel it, do that. Hold it between your hands. Imagine that it's like a little sharp, roundy ball, and it's giving itself to you, and it's in between your hands. And I want you to look at it and talk to it. Tell it that you now hear it. You are in tune with it. You are listening. You honor the feelings, and that you ask it now to work with you so that your body may heal better. Ask that it shrinks in size enough that the flow of blood and plasma and energy is able to flow past it now. It doesn't have to leave. You don't have to get rid of it. You just want it to be small enough that it doesn't block anymore. And it still has its place, and you still need to listen to it. But for now, you're just asking it to go to sleep a little bit, curl up, get a little smaller. And if you feel that response, make sure that you give thanks. And once that's done, I want you to bring your awareness back to the blood, back through the limbs, back to the nose, to the air on your skin, the room around you. And when you're ready, return, return, return.
Oh my goodness, that was so powerful. I could actually feel where I was blocked, and I didn't have to go far. It was right in my crown. So,
Oh, that's so great.
But you could feel it unravel, and it's such a great thing because I know, when people purchase your book, it's got the journals, but you also have meditations to go with it, right?
Yes, every one of them. And they're on audio. You can go to my website and listen to them. So you can read it in the book and know what it, in case you miss a word or you want to read it. But it's really hard to follow a meditation by reading. And so we recorded all of them. And the producer for the meditations is a hypnotherapist and a producer. So the music that he came up with is really exquisite. And I think you'll really enjoy it because, that kind of meditation was the ones on my website were not hot seat off the cuff meditations. They were meditations that I spent a lot of time crafting. And so they work really well.
Yeah, they're pretty powerful. I thought as I went through all those, I really enjoyed that. If our listeners are going to take just one thing with them today, what do you want them to take with them?
That your body is full of magic and wisdom, and that you are allowed to heal. You are allowed to be happy, healthy, and free.
Well, that's a great place to be. My goodness, Emily, we could talk forever. I love your work, and I consider you one of my dearest friends. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn about this great book and all your other books too?
My website, healingourselveswhole.com. healingourselveswhole.com. And honestly, I always say this, and I think people are surprised that I do it, but if you reach out to me, you will get a response that day. I will work with you. If you have some questions, if you have some advice needed, things like that. Again, this is the love of that. I'm not setting it up as a business. You just pop on by and I will give you the love. I will do everything I can to help you either find the right place to go for your healing. I'll sit with it. I'll sit with your story and give you some feedback, but I'm available and I'm always available to my readers.
It's one of the great things that I appreciate about you. My goodness, Emily. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Marianne. I love you so much, and I'm so glad to be here.
Well, thank you, Emily. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Healing Ourselves Whole. Healing Ourselves Whole is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. Again, if you'd like to connect with Emily, you can at healingourselveswhole.com for more information. Healing Ourselves Whole has tons of journal prompts, free guided meditation, and actionable tools that you can use to empower your journey. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.